Michal, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Boker Tov. It's so great to be together. We are really thrilled to have you with us, Michal, virtually. Although it feels like we really are with you and you really are with us. And a welcome to everyone who's with us here in the sanctuary for Hebrew school parents and everyone who's with us from your homes. Michal, you really need no introduction here at Ohev Shalom because I spoke about you in the book during the High Holy Days on Yom Kippur. I've sent out a myriad of emails to the congregation in preparation for today. And as of this morning, we had 138 registrants. Maybe we're up to 140 by now. And as far as the synagogue Zoom program is concerned, that is absolutely a bestseller. So this is really it. So, Michal, you and I have had an opportunity to speak twice over the past number of weeks. The first time we spoke, I thought it was going to be a very brief and cursory conversation, last a few minutes or so, just to get the things ready for the program today. But you asked me to tell you about the synagogue. I wasn't anticipating that, and so I was a little surprised. And when I told you that I was surprised, you said you were surprised that I was surprised. Because, we've had some pretty big speakers here over the years, illustrious speakers. We have had Elie Wiesel, Dr. Ruth, Leonard Nimoy, Mitch Albom, Debbie Friedman. Noah was on our stage, on our bima. No one ever asked about Ohev Shalom. I think I told you, the only thing they asked is, where are you located? I would say in Richboro, so they could say when they got on, I'm so happy to be here in Richboro. But you asked about the synagogue, and after I shared with you a little bit about the synagogue, our vital statistics, you said, no, you said, I really want to know about the soul of the synagogue. And Michal, I was really very, very touched that you wanted to know about us. And you often say you like to make it real. And I know that today is going to be really real. So for someone who doesn't need any introduction, let me just say that you are now the head of company culture and diversity and inclusion. And we're all about inclusion here at Ohev Shalom at TikTok Europe. I should tell you, Michal, that I downloaded the app for TikTok a couple of weeks ago in your honor. I'm not sure that I totally get it yet, but I'm enjoying it. And there's a young lady here in the States who was abducted and her life was saved because she did the hand motions of TikTok and she was discovered and she was safely brought home as a result of that. And before that, you were International Leadership and Development Director at Facebook, Officer and Commander in the IDF, university degrees in psychodynamic and systemic thinking, and then in sociology, anthropology. Wife, we were with your husband Yair a few moments ago, and mother of 4 beautiful children. So once again, residing in London. And by the way, Michal, being in London, could you send our best wishes for a refuah shlema to the Queen? I understand that there's a major program happening in England today. She can't attend it. Her back is hurting. So
I don't have the detail, but I was very impressed that Kate Middleton, Her Highness, was opening a new Holocaust memorial event, a few studios here. So I know that the royal family support us.
That's great, 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 great. So Michal, let's just open with this if we can. This is a question that people have been asking in our Thursday afternoon discussion group based on your book. And the question is, Michal, what were you afraid of? You seem to have it all. You've accomplished about everything one could dream of accomplishing: a loving marriage, as I said, 4 beautiful children, an exciting, successful career. What did you want to do if you weren't afraid? And if I can just add one more part to the question is, what motivated you to take that first step across the narrow bridge On that morning, when you Google depression, anxiety, happiness in Judaism, which led to your immersion in Jewish learning, which you've integrated on a day-to-day basis, what motivated you to take that first step across the narrow bridge?
Thank you, Rabbi Perlstein. And it is very special for me to be here with you today. It's 3:30 afternoon here in London, so it's a bit later than you for you your morning. And I just want to keep it real. If there's not good connection, if you can hear my children in the background, anything that could potentially interrupt us. And I'm starting our conversation, Rabbi Perlstein. We already built trust between us, but I'm also immediately building trust with the hundreds of people on the call, either now, anyone that's to watch it later on. And in order to answer your question, I need to tell you a little bit about myself. So obviously my accent is not British. I'm from Israel. I'm from Tel Aviv originally. As you said, I still lived in the military, but before that, I also lived in Tel Aviv, I guess half of my life. And I'm a granddaughter to Holocaust survivors. And my grandparents actually helped raise me when I was very young. We lived just door by door next to them. And I was very much influenced by my grandmother, Hannah Kaisman, who was, both of them were survivors, but she survived in a quite unique way when she jumped off the train, which was on the way to Auschwitz. She felt, like many others, that something very bad was going to happen, but she either find the courage or a combination of courage and luck, she managed to jump off. But she was going through hell from before that moment and also after. And when they arrived to Israel, they were very much post-traumatized. And I heard Holocaust stories from very young. He told me indeed, and that was my DNA. My DNA was to expect the worst to happen. And that very much affected me. But I didn't tell anyone, because anyone that is second or third generation Holocaust knows that we want to please. We want to make our parents happy. We want to make it all worth something. So even though I was dreaming of Nazis coming and taking me from my bed and expecting the worst to happen every single moment of the day, I smiled and I persevered and I did all those things that you mentioned on my CV and on my LinkedIn. But inside, I was really suffering. It didn't help that my father was in a quite meaningful role in of Israel for years, and he had seen many things. And I, through being his very close daughter, saw very difficult. But that was my bag. And each of us on this call, we each have our bag. My baggage filled me with fear. But I knew I had to carry on. And as you mentioned, I served in the military and I was an officer, and I actually did some stuff that was quite, I don't know, not extreme, but challenging, responsible for many, many other women. After the army, I had a bit of a, maybe breakdown. I couldn't do it anymore. And I started going to therapy. And I went to therapy for a good 15 years. And I tried to fix myself because I was sure that I was damaged for life. I couldn't enjoy, but I couldn't breathe. Now I'm not breathing because I'm excited, but then I couldn't breathe because I was anxious. And the only ways I thought that could help me get better were actually medication and therapy. I had no idea that there is something for me in actually part of my identity of being Jewish. I grew up engaged with Judaism that much, apart from the fact that when you grow up in Israel, in maybe secular parts of Israel, Judaism is in the air, right? On Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, there's no cars. There's no activities really on Shabbat from school. So, you experience Judaism through, I guess, physically, but definitely not spiritually. And when I moved to London, again, Judaism is hard for me, but it was a very low point that I hit when I turned 38. As you said, I already had 3 children. Now I have 4, thank God. I was at 38 and I was worried about myself. I worked hard for degrees and family and a partner, but inside I couldn't, I found it really hard to live. And when I reached that moment at the age of 38, when I said something needs to change and I'm not going to find my healing in the therapy room. And that's when I went to social media. I went to Google. And for some reason, on a Shabbat in the morning, I Googled a few words. I Googled depression, anxiety, and fear, but I also Googled joy and happiness. And for some reason, I also Googled Judaism. And this Google search came up with a result that led me to a lady that studies the connection between joy and living meaningfully and Judaism. And I reached out to her, and that's where my discovery started. And this was 8 years ago.
And here we are today.
And here we are today.
With a bright smile on your face. Absolutely. So, Michal, you said in your, I'm just reading something that's on the screen. Yeah. So you said that this has all made you a better parent. So can you tell us about that and how being immersed in Jewish wisdom can in fact make one a better parent? I'm sure your kids feel exactly the same way, that you're a much better parent today. And while you're talking about parents, though you're not nearly old enough for this, maybe a word or two for grandparents amongst us that are with us.
My parents tell me that being a grandparent is the best thing ever. And, my parents and I, we had a tense relationship for many, many years. And actually, when I was going to therapy, there was a lot of blaming them and using the terminology. I know I have an unfinished business with my father, and there was a lot of difficult moments. I am blessed today to have the privilege to go kind of full circle with my parents and have a different relationship with them. And so that's as a daughter, and I will always be a daughter, right? But I also understand the deep meaning in being a grandparent, which for them, and I don't want to speak on behalf of my parents, it's a correction. It's an opportunity for them to be who they couldn't be for me because they were raising me in a survival mindset. Now they're more comfortable in their skin. My mother says that she only started living at 60, really understanding who she is. So now with my children, they can be a different version of themselves, and they really like it. So I want to talk about parenting, but I also want to say, what is this thing that I discovered? For anyone that didn't read the book or is planning to read the book or wondering, is it even worth reading the book? What I discovered is that I thought for many years that Judaism is what you look like, what you wear, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. I saw more the rules and regulations of Judaism. And I had no idea that Judaism, it's about the soul. It's about this unique essence, this godly soul that we all have, everyone on the call and everyone that we're going to watch this forever. We all have a godly soul in us. And regardless of what happened to us in life, mistakes that we made, things that were done to us, our soul is always as pure as it was. And that gave me a lot of hope. And I learned that the Jewish way of living is about looking forward. And I learned that the Jewish way of living is about being afraid, but then overcoming fear. And I fell in love with that. And connected to parenting, when I studied, one of my second degrees is in psychotherapy, and I studied actually a lot about babies, and I learned there through the lectures connected to Freud and Melanie Klein, etc., like the big fathers and mothers of psychoanalytic thinking, was that I learned that the child is born a clean slate, tabula rasa, like, like a white canvas, and therefore anything that this child becomes to be is all my responsibility, or my partner's, or whoever's very close to the child. They're born neutral. And as a young mother, as a first-time mother, that made me feel very, very anxious. This huge responsibility about this baby that I'm now holding with me. I'm fully responsible of whoever they turn to be. And what I learned from Judaism, and this is advice that King Solomon gave thousands of years ago, he probably gave the first piece of advice on parenting ever. What he teaches us is that as parents, and I'm not saying that this is easy, we should raise our children by their soul, which means that a child has a soul. They are already on a journey. They have a path to go on, and it's their unique path. And sometimes it's not going to be the path that we would want for them, or maybe not one that we would choose for them, or maybe one that doesn't make us fully happy. But they're coming here with a soul, with a neshama in Hebrew, and our role is to help them navigate and get rid of obstacles and support. And I found that truly inspirational. As I said, not always easy, but it's a different way to look at parenting and grandparenting, I assume. So I love the Jewish narrative of raising children by their soul.
So a parent has a responsibility, but isn't totally responsible, and has to respect who that child really is in the depths of their being. That children aren't born to become clones of us. That's not
no, fortunately or unfortunately, right? Depending who, not. And you know how they say that the eyes are the window to the soul, and be curious about who your child is, and really try to be less judgmental. And as I said, like you said, you think that my children are happier with me. We'll need to ask them, and who knows what they're going to complain about me for sure, and they already do, I'm sure. But at least trying to understand, yes, what my child's soul is, and that each of my children have a different soul. And you know how sometimes they say to parents, how are they so different to each other? Same parents, grew up in the same home. Of course they're different. They're different souls. They're coming from different places. They're going to different ways. And I remember it really helped me understand how comparing children is definitely something I was guilty of doing, and it doesn't help anyone.
So, it's so interesting, Michal, when we have kids who find a different course in life than our own course, or what we might have wanted to chart for them, then we say, where did I go wrong? And we do something very Jewish. We feel a great deal of guilt.
Yeah.
Where did I go wrong? But you're taking a very different approach to this, that child has somehow woven within their very being their own course. And we can transmit our values to them, but we can't expect them to be just following the path that we have and we might have wanted them to.
Yeah, and I don't think it's easy. And I have a couple of very close friends where their children went on a certain path, very different to how they were raised. And what I'm learning from my friends, and I with admiration, is that they're staying close, that they're practicing acceptance, they're practicing curiosity, right? And the beautiful thing about life, and as a very anxious person historically, I know that it's easier said than done. Life is it's long. It's a journey, and I guess people go on journeys, and children go on journeys. And I'm now 46, and only now in the last 2 years, I feel that my parents and I are in a beautiful place. So you know, we don't want tests as parents or as humans, but what the Jewish wisdom, this is not me saying it, Rabbi Perlstein, the Jewish wisdom is telling us that as parents, we need to let go. That as parents, we need to give values and structure of life, but we cannot expect our children to be copy-paste of ourselves. And we also learn, and I've learned this in the last parasha, about letting our children actually go on their journey. I always find it fascinating that, you know, I need to now let my daughter go her way. She wants to make aliyah. And I was like, you're going to leave me? Of course she's not going to leave me. She's going on her journey. It's selfish to say that she's leaving me. So yeah, it's a lot of hard work.
So, you know, Michal, since you mentioned the parasha, I can't help but think as I'm looking at next week's Torah portion, when Jacob comes back to meet his brother Esau again, that you write about the broken heart, and the growth happens within the spaces of the broken heart. I think that's the story of Jacob also. He's a guy who keeps running away, but
Yes.
only after he wrestles with the angel and he's wounded, he's now wounded. He's got his own broken heart that he can then approach his brother Esau again and try to have some kind of reconciliation between the two. So the wisdom of the Torah and your wisdom are really going hand in hand in a very beautiful way.
And that's why I love it. I don't know, for some reason, the parasha this week, this Shabbat, and as you said, next Shabbat, I couldn't sleep this Friday night. We were speaking about the parasha and, you know, as the dream and the angels and the ladder, and I couldn't sleep on Friday night. I woke up in the morning and I said, normally I sleep very well on Friday night, because that's my, like, I help myself with alcohol, and, you know, we you know, it's like a bit of a, you know, beautiful night, Friday night. But so for some reason I couldn't sleep, and I was really thinking about this experience, as you said, about running away and breaking and how much disappointment Yaakov had. And then, yes, it connected to, and I share this with you, Rabbi Perlstein, I was raised for perfectionism. I was expected, I don't know if it's because, I don't want to say who got it into my system, but I always thought I should be perfect. And because I had these very, very negative, dark, sometimes self-hurting thoughts in my head, I thought I was damaged and broken. And because also a couple of people hurt me in my life, I thought I was broken and therefore really anything but perfect. And that made me feel uncomfortable and ashamed and also scared. But when I learned the beautiful idea in the Jewish wisdom, which is there's nothing more complete than a broken heart, it changed my perspective on brokenness. And actually, I learned that being broken is being wholesome. It's being it is being perfect. It's being complete. And I can't remember exactly, you know, who said it, that actually you cannot reach a certain level of being a leader as a Jewish person unless you're broken, unless you broke. And I also think unless you feel this sense of brokenness, how can you be empathetic towards someone? So yes, it's very important to remind ourselves that being broken is being complete. And also very important to remind ourselves, you know, today is World Kindness Day. I love this day. And you mentioned you were very kind in the beginning to say, you know, all these things about my degrees and these things, but we never know, or not degrees, you know, you have this and really beautiful things in life, but we never ever know what lies behind the, you know, the makeup or the, you know, the good hair day or whatever. We'd never know what's going on in people's hearts, and if their hearts are broken at the moment or they haven't recovered from a breaking. And knowing that being broken is being complete, and actually growing a community that lives through that value is very good for mental health and well-being, which, as you know, is something I care about deeply.
So the book is all about Jewish wisdom, Michal, but Judaism, as you also talk about, is very much of a behavioral oriented way of life. So can I ask you about your own Jewish lifestyle? We've just learned one thing, that you like to imbibe on Friday night. So how is that part of a Shabbat experience, and how does Judaism function on a day-to-day basis in your life?
Of course, you can ask me almost everything. I told you, I feel very comfortable with your, we have this kind of, chemistry and understanding of each other. So as you said, I believe that Jewish wisdom is universal wisdom. I think it's just almost like this beautiful, I don't want to say secret, but almost unknown wisdom. And it is universal. These ideas that I write in the book could be applied by anyone and everyone, regardless of their faith, what do they believe in, anyone that wants to grow. So the book is a self-help book. It's not a religion. It's not about religion. It's about growing. It's about being curious, about being a better version of yourself, fulfilling your potential as a human that carries a soul inside. But yes, it's also about the Jewish wisdom, and I am born Jewish. We never practiced Judaism in my home when I grew up. So I never saw Kiddush. We never kept Shabbat. It was, as I said, it was more of a knowing that we're Jewish, but we had a lot of respect for our faith. But as I became more curious about the Torah, and I started reading every week's portion, and I wondered, so what does this have to do with me? Like every portion I would do, so okay, so I'm learning this, but what does it mean for me? What does it mean for me as a wife, as a daughter, as a sister, as a mother? I realized that there's people have been feeling anxious and fearful and jealous for thousands of years. Freud didn't make this anxiety thing up. People have always been feeling this way, and the Torah was created to help us navigate through these challenges. So I realized this is marvelous. This is life-changing. I want to bring this to my life where I live every day. I was working there at Facebook, now at TikTok. How can it help me be a better employee? How can it help me be a better leader? But then I also fell in love with a few practices in Judaism. And as you know, I shared with you between us in our one-on-one conversation, I love Shabbat. I think Shabbat, there's a saying in Hebrew, Shabbat doesn't keep us. We don't keep Shabbat. Shabbat keeps us. In Hebrew is it sounds really better. But it's Shabbat keeps me balanced. It keeps me, more happier, I guess, because whatever happens with the week that I go through, and I work very, very long hours, and I navigate like everyone here on the call. I try to be this and that, and I care about being a community member. I care about being a professional. I care about what I eat. I care, but regardless of what happens, the Michigan madness that goes throughout the week, I know that there's going to come this beautiful time on a Friday afternoon when slowly I will bring into my home and to my heart this holiness of Shabbat. And personally, I decided, together with my husband, in a very, very slow pace, to let go of technology on Shabbat, to put the iPads and the iPhones and whatever in the cupboard, and actually have 25 hours of us time. It's not always easy, and it took a minute to get used to it. When I say a minute, it took a year, but now I really love it. So I love practicing Shabbat. It's probably the thing that I love most. There's other mitzvot that I follow, but this one is the one that I feel most inspired by.
So Michal, you mentioned earlier that today is International Kindness Day, and we're talking about Shabbat. One of the things that really touched me in your book is that you sit around the Shabbos table and you all offer these compliments to each other. What could be more kind than to compliment each other? Can you just share a little bit about how that goes and how you make it?
So we're a very normal family, right? So when I tried to create this setting of sitting around the table with the children back then, there was the three of them, and it was a very different experience. It was Friday night. and everyone had to let go of technology, as I said, and we were kind of sitting, we did Kiddush, and it was like, okay, like, how are we going to run the show? There's like hours now to get through it. And we started arguing, the kids and this and that, and it became, it wasn't pleasant. I also think that the kids just didn't know what to do with themselves. And it was boring. As you know, kids love use the word boring. And then my husband and I realized we have to do something about this. And Yair, my husband, gives himself the credit, so I'll give him the credit for Shalom Bayit, for peace in the house, that we came up with this idea called compliments game. And what we asked the children after Kiddush and after we ate the challah, we asked not just the children, but ourselves, to go around the table, and every person, every family member was asked to say one kind thing about everyone in the family. So let's say it's my turn. So I say something positive to Yair. I give him a compliment. I give a compliment to my 16-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 8-year-old, my 4-year-old. And the compliments could be anything from, thank you for canceling your meeting because you saw that I needed a hug, or thank you for giving up dance because mom had to take me to soccer, or whatever that was. And the children, especially the two older ones, they found it exceptionally difficult to say something nice about each other. And we said, so no dessert. There's time, find something nice to say. And it took them months to wire themselves, not because they're not kind and nice children, they didn't have this habit to even think or express a kindness in statements and compliments. And then slowly we all wired ourselves for this ritual, because it is a ritual that we've brought to our family. And at some point, I think 4 or 5 months after we were in this habit of giving compliments, my then, maybe he was 5, 6-year-old said, do you know, Ima, now it's so easy to give compliments because I see them all the time. I see goodness all the time. So it's so easy for me to share it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to help them and myself wire ourselves to see good, because there's good in everything and everyone. And I'm happy with this game.
Well, it sounds like a lot more than a game. It sounds like a life-changing experience. It's really, to compliment each other and to then take it to see the goodness in the world. The Baal Shem Tov said that there are wonders and miracles all around us, but we take our hand and put it in front of our eyes and we don't see them. So to awaken your family to see the goodness in each other and then in others, wow, what a gift.
And also at work, so like, I sometimes, I wonder, like at work or a community, how you have like often like a nice thought about someone, like a really positive complimentary thought that you have, like, oh, something like you have this colleague and you always feel so at ease when you're speaking with them, or you have this colleague and you always feel like they empower you, like they give you more space to talk in meetings. I mean, not give you, but invite you to, or that person when you love their ideas, like, why don't you say, like, let's say that, let's tell that person, I love your ideas, or thank you for always including me in team meetings, or because people are having positive thoughts, but for some reason, they're not sharing them.
So Michal, I just want to take a moment to make a note to everybody who's on the call with us. So folks who are either here or watching at home, one of Michal's central ideas is the idea of tzimtzum, of making ourselves smaller so there's room for others. So folks, I want to make mention that there is plenty of room for you to ask your own question and kind of take over. So if you would just send your message in a chat, it'll eventually come to me, and I can then ask the question that you most want to ask Michal. Michal, in the meantime, you mentioned before your book is a self-help book primarily. So the person who's read every self-help book that ever came out, so the question is, what is different about your self-help book than all the other self-help books? How can it inspire someone to grow and become and change where the others just didn't do it?
I don't know all the self-help books. I do read a lot of them. I'll try to share why I wrote the book, and maybe that will answer the question. I discovered for my own personal life the beautiful ideas, the life-changing ideas within the Jewish wisdom. And I discovered a spiritual wisdom that helps you navigate life, navigate and help you with feelings of anxiety and despair and loneliness, things that I'm guessing many people on this call have been through in our lives because they're all so normal. I discovered that Jewish wisdom normalizes all of those. I discovered that we were never supposed to be perfect. And I wanted to share that message. I also wanted to write a book from my personal voice as a woman of faith now, as someone that is not completely, I mean, I don't want to go into the spectrum of, froom, but like this is my own hair, I wear jeans, I live a certain life. I haven't, I don't look different today in many ways to how I looked before I discovered the wisdom, but I learned about myself life-changing lessons that you can learn at 50, at 60, at 70, 80 years old. And that's the essence of this book, is to really share how Judaism is about self-help. It is about growing, and it's also about falling. And it's also about falling and then getting back on your feet and starting again, or continuing the journey, because that's the story of the Jewish people. And that's where I hope the book can bring meaning to people. In the book, I also share my big belief, I would say, in Viktor Frankl's work. That I when I read the book Man's Search for Meaning, and I know you and I read the book, Rabbi Perlstein, the small but mighty book of Man's Search for Meaning, it changed my life. His learnings that meaning is finding your meaning is a way to overcome fear and anxiety, also changed my life. And I realized that Judaism is about finding meaning, that each of us, each of our souls is here to do something meaningful. Unless we had something meaningful to do, we wouldn't be here. So I found that very empowering. And I want to share that message. I want to share that message with younger people, when people that are starting this life experience and sometimes are feeling overwhelmed. This is my mission.
So one of the words you use in your book is a word that I love, love, love. It's the first question that God asks to Adam and to Eve. The question is Ayeka, where are you? It's not a geographical question, it's an existential question. So you've shared a tremendous amount about where you came from on this journey. So at this moment in life, Michal, Ayeka, where are you and how are you?
As you said, it's an existential question and not a physical question. Where am I? I am grateful for this discovery, and I'm grateful for an opportunity to meet with communities like all of you. And I want to share this message with the world. So that's where I am. I'm also at a place when I know that I have work to do on myself. I have to find a way to balance things at home. I want to find a way to forgive myself when I get it wrong with my family. I want to live fully. I want to maximize life and do something meaningful. And by the way, sometimes when people say do something meaningful, or use the purpose word, people think, oh, purpose is that executive CEO that's like standing on a stage and they're doing they have their big business, or whatever. Like, I actually feel, and the way I look at purpose is something that's dynamic. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, my purpose was to become a first-time mom and then different children, my children were born one after the other. And I found that really purposeful. Today, what's purposeful for me is, being a community member, being a wife, a mother, but also birthing this book, which is my fifth baby. And please God, 5 years from now, I'll have a different purpose. And purpose can be doing something meaningful for someone else. And purpose could be trying something and failing. But it means that we are curious to connect with our souls and to try to understand who we are rather than who someone else wants us to be. I find that really purposeful to understand who we are and what we're here to do.
So we talk a lot about vulnerability, Michal, and I should tell you that in our Thursday afternoon discussion group that's based on your book, it's amazing, I think, to all of us that from week to week, how much more vulnerable we become in telling our stories to each other. So I think it takes a great deal of courage to write a book, including all of your less than perfect aspects of yourself, and to share that with us. It takes courage. But it seems to me, you're not going to meet us in shul, and we're probably not going to be sitting around the Shabbos table together. We're not going to bump into each other on the street. So there's a certain distance between, London and Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But I'm interested in the sharing, the vulnerability that now people, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and your high-powered executives in the corporate world, they now know all this about you. I mean, that's courage with capital letters. How is that working? Are you paying a price for that at all?
Oh, I lost a lot of sleep before I pressed the send button to my publisher. I won't lie. It felt, especially since I was someone that was working on, their persona and brand or whatever you call it. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. I asked for, I guess, permission or okay from my husband and from my children, because I'm writing about my mental health and all of their friends are at school, as you said, are going to be able to read about this. I asked permission from my parents. But then I decided to go for it because I thought that there is a problem in this world when people often, they don't often enough share their vulnerability. And sometimes they'll share their vulnerability, but it's like 20 years after. And then it was like, I'm very familiar with this world of dealing with mental health challenges. And I wanted to tell it now. And actually, I wanted my children to know that it's normal to have, I always say to my children, whatever dark, scary thought that you have in your head, it's a normal thought. Tell me your thought. I'll deal with it. I'll help you. And that's what I didn't have as a child. I dealt with all of those horrible thoughts in my own head. And I suffered. I suffered so badly. And I was at risk at some point. So I decided to take upon myself feeling sometimes uncomfortable for the benefit of anyone feeling stronger and better about themselves through the book. I met with about 250 girls a few weeks ago at one of the biggest girls' Jewish schools in London. And I think initially they wanted to listen to me because I'm TikTok, and that was interesting. But I really hope that what they took from that meeting is that they're on a journey and they don't have to rush to get anywhere, and to trust their parents and their carers or someone that's really close to them, and to love themselves and to love their own skin. And I told you this, Rabbi Perlstein, even though I didn't bring this into the book, because that was one thing I decided not to share and be vulnerable about, that at some point when I was so anxious and I was really in my OCD, I became obsessed about how I look. And I became really obsessed about anti-aging treatments. And I got to a stage when I injected so much into my face, I couldn't move the muscles in my face, and I made a joke out of myself, and some people called me like Joker, the Joker, and it was horror. I was 38, and just that person that you see and you say, like, why is she doing this to herself? I couldn't help myself. I knew what was going on. I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself, but I couldn't help myself. So I'd rather take this vulnerability than the vulnerability of freezing something of my identity or in myself. So that's the journey I decided to go on.
Wow. So the questions are coming in fast and furious now. Can you talk a little bit about the message and mantra behind you? What would you do if you weren't afraid?
Yes.
How does this guide you?
Oh, I didn't share the why is this the name of the book? Of course. So it was really special when I discovered the Jewish wisdom and Chassidut. You know, I love Chassidism, which is about really how to deal with life. And as we know, for many generations, Jewish life was all about challenge and struggle and overcoming them. And the whole idea of the Jewish wisdom, as we said, is actually overcoming struggle, but knowing that struggle is also a vehicle for growth, fortunately or unfortunately. And so at the same time, when I discovered these beautiful ideas of Jewish wisdom, I started working for Facebook in London. And on the first day when I joined Facebook, the company, I entered the whole reception and I saw this poster on the wall. And it said, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And as someone that was always afraid to fail, to not be good enough, to not be pretty enough, all the failures that you can think of, I suddenly started to work for this company that internally is asking its employees to think about what would you do if you weren't afraid? So they acknowledge the fact that we're afraid. And internally, Facebook, when I was working for the company, it had a very, very positive culture, a very culture about believing in yourself and trying harder. And so that's why I chose this mantra. It's actually a Facebook mantra. It started also from the book, I think, Who Moved My Cheese, which is all about acknowledging the fact that we all are afraid, but how interesting it is to think about what would we do if we weren't afraid. Because the fear is this obstacle to get to that beautiful thing that's on the other side of the fear. And I love that.
So, last time we spoke a few days ago, I mentioned to you that today's really about you being with us. And it's not about me sharing the platform with you. They hear enough from me as it is. And somehow the gods got word of that, and that in the beginning from here, you didn't see it, but from here in the sanctuary, the feed was very shaky. And I thought, up to Lucas, it has to be happening right now. So we have with us here an executive at Comcast, and she came over and she turned off the video feed from me. So that's why no one has seen me all this time since we started. So, Gamzu Latova. It was evidently the way it was made to be. I want to just read another. This one seems very touching. Michal, I am the grandchild of survivors with a history of anxiety that is driven professionally and challenged by the dynamics of a survivor family. I am also heartened by the do-over component of seeing my parents as grandparents. How do you recommend starting that healing conversation?
With a small step, and thank you for the person that writing this. I think that it's like, I really believe in taking one step at a time. And sharing that you're taking one step. I'm a big believer in communicating what goes on in a person's head, explaining, giving context. So I think anything that has to do with connecting with survivors or with first generation through being a second generation or a third is about saying, I want to reach out to you on this because, or, taking it, being very thoughtful. because I had grandparents from both sides. Both sides were survivors. One side didn't want to talk about it, and the others didn't stop. So I think it's so individual, and also being really empathetic to the fact that maybe sometimes it's good not to talk for certain people in a certain stage of their life, and just to hold your hand or look into your eyes is also healing. We're also very different. And I also want to say that Jeffrey was, I believe it was Jeffrey that just wrote about fear and like how fear can be a good thing. And yes, Jeffrey, I want to make the difference between fear and anxiety. There's an element of fear, as you said, that is for our survival, right? Like if a snake is chasing me, or a lion is about to, jump on me, I don't know actually what's recommended to do, but it's definitely not about, it's a good fear. Like this is dangerous, right? And the same with coronavirus, right? We had to be fearful, because if not, we wouldn't have put like a mask on or social distance ourselves. So, some fears, there's a reason we are fearful, because it helps us to survive. What I talk more about in the book is about the fear from the fears. It's about the anxiety. It's about what if, and mainly things that are done connected to confidence or to your ability, the being anxious about that thing that could happen. So I share about my anxiety about letting my kids going on school trips and really not letting them go, because I know that there's going to be an accident in the car, in the shuttle, or I know that someone's going to kidnap them. That fear, I had to overcome it. It doesn't mean that I have a guarantee that everything's going to be okay. And I wish life and I wish Hashem gave us guarantees. But what I learned is that the only guarantee I have is to be and do my best. But I can't control the world. I can't even control the people around me or what happens to them. And that let go, in my experience, takes some of the anxiety down.
Michal, we're going to be wrapping in a few moments. I don't know if your assistant Hani is on with us right now, but I sent a question to Hani on Friday afternoon. She's in New York, so it was still Friday afternoon here. And she wrote back to me, I found this to be so beautiful. She said, I can't ask Michal now because she's already brought in Shabbat, about 5 hours ahead of us. And there's something very beautiful about that. That Jewish life is that meaningful and that important. I mean, you already said it, that you turn off all electronics and whatever. But can you just thank Hani for me? She's been great, and we've had a lot.
Of course. I have a feeling that she's on, and so is my husband, and maybe my mom as well. But of course, I'm blessed, like many of you here are, with a group of people that we're part of something that is bigger than us. And I think that also, reminds me of the idea of community that I spoke with you about, Rabbi Perlstein. And that's why I almost interrogated you about your community, right? I wanted to know, tell me about the people and tell me about what they do and what they care about and where they live and how do they bring to life their Judaism, and about interfaith in your community. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is because I think the ideas in Jewish wisdom can be brought to interfaith families, and everyone can feel included. So thank you, Hani, for respecting my lifestyle and my own boundaries. And by the fact of mentioning boundaries, I think boundaries are good. When I was interviewed, thanks to you, for this weekend as newspaper, the interviewer asked me, Jared asked me, but isn't Judaism about lots of boundaries? About things that you don't do, you have to need to commit to it. And I said to him that I need actually to commit to things to make them part of my life. So the boundaries, or the potential boundaries in Judaism, are good for me, because then I feel safe within those boundaries. And Shabbat makes me feel safe, actually. It gives me clarity.
Well, we're running up against the boundary. We said that we were going to conclude at 11:25 so that parents here would be able to pick their kids up from Hebrew school. They're going to be dismissed in just a few minutes. And I promised myself, Michal, that I would not ask you what's the title of your next book? So we've run out of time. I can't ask you, and we'll see when it comes out. We'll see.
Please
So
don't.
Michal, thank you so very much. This has been an extraordinary hour. Really, really, it's just, I mean, I have, and I'm sure we all have, just taken in so much from you, your words, your wisdom, the passion that you put into what you say, which says that it comes from the heart. And since you quoted a Hebrew phrase about Shabbat, you know, the Hebrew phrase, I think you mentioned it in the book, that what comes from the heart enters the heart. So I think all of our hearts are better right now than they were an hour ago. So God bless you, Michal. Continue to do the great work that you're doing and really bringing a new pathway of life to so many people. And I just want to mention for everybody that's here, today's program is really like, folks, an Oprah program. You all walk home with a gift of one of Michal's books, and they're outside in the Grand Hall. And to the congregation, not this Shabbat, but the following Shabbat, which is Thanksgiving Shabbat, the books will be out for anyone in the congregation that would like to come and get a book and read it. And I said to Michal the other day that I've been reading the book now for the second time, and I'm taking much more time on each chapter. And it just, the wisdom, the more time you take, the more you get out of it. So please come, those of you who are here now, and for the congregation, next Shabbat of Thanksgiving. And also for many of you, I know many of you already bought Michal's book, so come get another one and give it to someone as a Hanukkah present. They deserve it. So Michal, thank you so very much. This has been a great, great, thanks.
Toda rabba. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful Sunday and rest of week.
Thanks, Michal. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Hillary, thanks to you. And thanks to Barbara. And
Thank you, Rabbi.
for those who are still on, let me make mention that there will be a recording. It's going to take a few days for us to put it together, but once it's together, we'll be sending that out to the congregation. So folks, everybody, thanks for being part of this. It's been a most special morning, and go Eagles, what can I say? Not all dreams come true, but maybe. So I think we're good, Hillary. We can call it, we're good?
We're good.
Okay, here we go.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.